So as you know, our build-to-rent company focuses on a main menu of single-family duplexes and quads. These are within residential real estate realms where you can get the best financing, but people say, which one should I work with? What's the differences? So Chris, I wanted to kind of ask you, I mean, you've done thousands of these, owned hundreds of these yourself. What would you say are the differences, pros, cons of single-family homes, duplexes, and quads?
Sure, great question. So it really depends on what you're looking for from an investment standpoint. You know, some of our clients are looking for a long-term hold where they can achieve maximum appreciation. Others are looking for the most current income and current monthly revenue and income that they can generate. And I think that's really where you want to start the conversation, because there really is no right or wrong answer. I mean, each one of our products really hits one of those marks. Yeah. And I'll start with single family and then I'll go to quad, because they're kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum. Single family homes have historically been our highest occupancy homes. They've also historically had the highest increase in value. Mm-hmm. But they've also been, on the negative side, they've been our lowest cash flowing properties. And so you compare that to a quadruplex, and a quadruplex typically has been our highest cash flowing properties over time. Still great appreciation, because the properties still have seen rental appreciation, which is what drives the quadruplex value growth and appreciation. But really it's that current income that drives more clients to the quads. Whereas on the single family homes, the rental growth isn't really the driver as much on the value of the increase value of that property, because ultimately it's the hold period and the appreciation that happens in the retail home market that drives up the single family homes. Versus the quadruplexes, it's all about the rental growth that drives up the value of those. Yeah. So you tend to see more emotion from a market standpoint from a home buyer than you do an investor, which tends to, when markets are good, and you always want to time your exit, right? To sell at that point in time where there's a little bit of frothiness in the market and the retail home buyers are really paying up for houses. Single family gives you that flexibility to move the tenant out, sell it to a retail home buyer. Yep. Quadruplexes, on the flip side, it's that steady rental growth over time that ultimately leads to that big appreciation.
That's the value, yeah.
And then you've got the investor on the back end that's that's buying that for what the cap rate is at that then point in time. The one that's kind of, I think, the most interesting
our funny little guy in the middle that I kind of like the most.
Yeah, so that's the one where it's a little bit of the best of both worlds. We see this duplex product that we build a lot of all over the place. It's always been a popular product because cash flow is pretty darn good on the duplexes, but it also has the potential to have that retail appreciation play. And that really comes down to what we're seeing more and more of is house hacking. As housing for the general population to live in becomes less and less affordable. We've seen these interest rates go up. We've seen housing prices go up. Folks are looking at ways that they can offset that mortgage payment. So for us as investors, that's something that is really great for us to take advantage of. Let's say, you buy a duplex and you've been renting that duplex out. You've been getting, some pretty decent cash flow over the years. And then, 4, 5, 6, 7 years in, you decide that you're going to sell that. Well, what we're starting to see is really a trend, well, I'd say the last 2 or 3 years, where retail home buyers are coming in and saying, hey, I want to buy that duplex from you. I'm going to live in one side, keep the tenant in the other side. And it's help offsetting their mortgage. So, whereas we investors, we're always looking for, the financial motive of we need to make a profit. Well, when the person is buying that home as a duplex from you and they're living in one side, they're not really looking at a profit motive. They're looking at how much of that mortgage are they offsetting so that they can get their mortgage payment down to something that they can afford so that they can live in an area that they want to live in. So, I think that all of these, all of these properties have their pros and cons, and it really comes down to what you as an investor are looking for.
Yeah. And I think that you can't really, it's tough to go wrong. I mean, if you look at our most successful investors, and we have over 1,000 investors that are active with us. Our most successful investors, a core of investors that have really planted a nice financial growth with us, they normally own between about 3 to 8 properties. And when we've looked at those 3 to 8 properties that they've owned, it's normally been a combination of these different properties. Now, some people just went all single family homes. That's all they wanted. They were looking more long term. But I'd say the majority of them would mix them up. Again, when we start out, I always like the duplex model because, like Chris said, you can get in a single family home neighborhood, you can get a higher rent yield. You have a great exit strategy. If you want to sell 5, 10 years down the road, it's not just an investor that might buy it. That first-time home buyer can actually get a loan for 5% down. It used to be, I think, 20 or 25% down with FHA. They changed it last year. So that exit strategy for a duplex is both an investor or a retail buyer, as Chris said, with the house hacking, so it's great. But again, the combination is very solid. If you're looking for the least amount of turnover and probably the most amount of equity growth with the most amount of stability, workforce housing, single-family homes is absolutely some of the strongest backbone of the U.S. economy and of steady values. So we like that. The quads, on the other hand, although they're a larger buy-in and have the highest cash flow, what's interesting about the quads is, and Chris didn't mention, which I thought you probably would because you've really had the blood, sweat, and tears of it, they're not that easy to get approved.
True.
In fact, when we first started building quads, you'd say, well, let's see what other quads are out there. And I had owned some quads before we started building them, but they were kind of a needle in a haystack. And you were buying something from the 1970s or earlier, you just weren't seeing them built. I mean, the national home builders, they definitely are not on our same level of thinking that duplex and quads are great. They think they're absolutely crazy and want to stick to the single family home market. But the quads, they can be hard to find and they're not easy to get approved. So once they get approved, especially if in the right area, you're kind of getting that quasi commercial ability within a residential community and loan structure. So that can be really good. So everything is to your liking. The combination has been great for our people. I usually think, and I don't think, you probably don't have a favorite. You like all three.
I do like all three. Yeah.
And I do too. I would say if I had to, then I'm just that simpleton that says pick the one in the middle, the duplex, because you can do it. But again, I own a combination of all. But I think that the duplex has a very interesting theme to it and fundamentals to it. You'll go right with all of them. The combination has been very successful. So again, hopefully that's helpful. A lot of people have been saying, just give us the breakdown, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of a better idea of how they each work. You got anything to?
No, I mean, you just posed a good question. Is if I had to pick one, if I did have to pick one, I think I probably would say duplex.
Would you? Okay.
And
I thought you might say quad. I don't. For some.
Well,
you're a little bigger and bolder than me on stuff like that.
So here's the thing, though, and again, each investment and each investor is different.
Yeah.
So depends on how many properties you're in a position to buy.
True.
So if you're in a position to buy, a lot of units, then I think that to me you mix it up, because I think having a mixture of all of those really has a risk mitigation feature embedded into it by having different property types and different geographies that you never know. You can't say this one for sure is going to work the best. You never actually know. So when you're mixing these things up, it gives you the opportunity to pull some levers later down the line, because you're thinking 5, 7, 10 years down the line, what is going to have the most growth potential. So by having one of each would be my preference.
That's true.
But if I had to pick one, that duplex does put you in the position to be able to realize some of the the commercial growth of a quadruplex, and then also has some of the characteristics of a single family home that we like as well. So if I had to split the baby, that's the one I'd go with.
Okay. And we didn't even mention for tenants, tenants who have young families, they can live in a single family home neighborhood that they wouldn't be able to afford at an affordable rent and feel like they have their own home, their own backyard, their own garage most of the times. So it is good. There is one other thing I did think of. Some people do come to us and say, I want to buy as many units as I can with my serviceability. So serviceability means, our in-house loan program, the base level one where you're getting that really good interest rate, you can only have up to 10 loans. And then you have to go to something called DSCR. If you don't know what those are, talk to our property counselors. They'll explain the whole fundamentals and how it works. But if you're I want to use my serviceability to get as many units as I can, well, we've had some people go all quadruplexes.
Well, then that absolutely makes the most sense.
Yeah.
When you're buying that many units, for the lower interest rate, then.
Well, and if you're only getting 10 loans, a quad is only one loan. A single family is only one loan. So if some people are more aggressive, they've gone all quadruplexes because they wanted to scale the portfolio as quick as possible with the best loans available. So I guess there's no way to go wrong, but again, just to, like you said, to split the hairs of each one, I'd say on one side, highest cash flow, on the other side, highest appreciation historically, and then in the middle, you can kind of benefit from both in that. So hopefully that helps. Any final words?
No, I think it just comes down to you, and this is where, when you're talking to the property counselors, explain your specific scenario, and they'll help guide you in the direction that they feel is best.
Yeah. First property is always the most important to get you off on the right foot. That way the second, third, or fourth can fall into line. So talk to your property counselors. Hopefully this helped. We'll talk to you soon.